Chris, good to see you, man. Welcome to Popternative.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You know, it's really cool because this movie is coming at a time where horror movies are really popular. You have this really incredibly unique kind of perspective of it, following Johnny, this slasher kind of in the woods and everything. And I'm just wondering, were you ever really like conscious of the audience member watching the movie while you were making it, or that kind of happened afterwards? Because this is the ultimate kind of like viewer movie, right? From a horror movie perspective. Like, how much were you thinking about the audience while you were making this movie?
I'd say 50-50. Yeah. You have to be aware of like what you're putting an audience through and what an audience's level of patience is going to be and how much you can try that. But at the same time, just thinking about weighing that with, what do I want to tell? What's the film that I want to make? But yeah, always kept the audience in mind.
Did it come natural with this idea of you wanted to write kind of this concept, this idea, then you're going to go actually shoot it, you're going to direct it? Because I feel like the writer director, I feel like you wear many hats naturally in the entertainment kind of film like industry. I feel like it just happens. But like, what was that process like for this one specifically? Did it just feel natural that you had a lot of kind of like hands in a lot of pots for this one?
Yeah, I kind of always have my hands in a lot of irons in the fire. No matter what I end up working on. It's just all part of the process. Like I like to be involved in everything. I'm also a prosthetics artist as well, so like doing a lot of the like being involved with a lot of the effects with our lead builder Steve Kostansky, uh, all that kind of stuff, and even helping out with costumes to some extent and building sets, props, all that. Yeah, it's all part of it. It's all what I love about making movies.
100%. The movie really is 0 to 100. You watch this movie, there are moments kind of where you're, following Johnny. He's in the woods, he's walking kind of slow. He, stops, looks around, you hear people, and then, boom, 100%, all these kills and everything. What was that journey like for you from a filmmaker's perspective? That 0 to 100 I'm talking about, seeing that like in the script and then seeing it come to life on screen when you actually shot it specifically.
Um, it was something that I kind of had to trust the instinct of,
Okay.
like, because it's very jarring.
Yeah.
But I was I was kind of taking cues from a lot of musical pieces I like that do have a nice little lull to them, and everything seems like a lull, and then you just get these very severe and sudden orchestral stabs, and it throws you off as a listener, but you feel like, oh no, this is so natural that this is happening right now, and it's intertwined with the rhythm of the song and the piece and the melody as well. And I was trying to replicate that in some way of like visually we're being very lulled, and then you know almost suddenly but seamlessly we're into these incredibly violent situations.
Was there a little bit of a ping pong match? I'm asking now from a writing perspective, the story of In a Violent Nature. Was there a little bit of like a ping pong match with creating kind of a backstory? Because I mean, at the end of the day, like a big kind of component of this is, Johnny's on this rampage. There's
Mhm.
reasons why he's on this rampage, right? But, when people kind of watch the movie, they're going to think a lot about the gory components of it and Johnny's on this rampage, but there has to be kind of motives and stories there. What was that like kind of coming up with that? Was there this push and pull of, is this a good enough backstory? Do we even need that much of a backstory? Like, I'm just curious about that, like from the motive perspective of Johnny.
Yeah, well, so much of it is like such an atmospheric tone piece,
Yeah.
and I knew it was going to be very like uh more cinematic in that way, more of like less of a story and
Yeah.
more of a visual experience that we're going through. But there has to be some story.
Yeah.
Like we can't, there's got to be something. So there was a conscious choice to like, okay, keep this small and also draw on as many familiar tropes that we can from the slasher genre.
Mhm.
Just like they're there, they're built there. They're like utilizing a trope doesn't have to be a nasty thing as long as you're using it as a tool to build towards something else.
Yeah.
So I lean back on a lot of those, realizing that, oh, we don't need to hear all of the story. We need to just hear like little glimpses.
Yes.
And as an audience at this point in time, in like all of our collective histories of being familiarized with the story that I am telling, like the story of like a slasher in the woods, the campfire story, that they'll be able to figure that out. And
Absolutely.
we can keep it as small as possible.
100%. That was a writing question. Now I have a directing question. One of my favorite kind of moments, kind of perfect segue too, is when we are kind of introduced a little bit to Johnny and the backstory, where we finally see everyone at the campfire in the woods and everything, and they're talking. I just love how that was filmed. I love the perspective. I love that it's kind of like a little bit of like, where is it coming from type thing. Like it's Johnny, like it's not really in Johnny's perspective as much. He's in the background, kind of lurking. Tell me a little bit about that sequence, working with all the actors, putting that, because that's a really important part of the movie, in my opinion. But I loved how that came together. That looked awesome.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. That was definitely like from a directing standpoint, one of the I guess it seems very, very simple and very easy, but like for the thesis that I was operating under, where one of the rules was we want to have Johnny in every shot, whether it's an arm or like a hand or a finger, whether or not he's at the start of the shot and then we don't see him anymore, or whether we only see him at the end of a shot. We wanted him to be in every shot, up until he isn't.
Yep.
So at that point in time, like originally the conception for that was we were going to be like over his shoulder watching them, and then the camera was going to drift around the fire at the campfire, and then it was going to be a one take wonder of just like circling around these campers, getting his backstory, and then once they all head back into the cabin, the camera then drifts back to Johnny again. So we were going to keep that rule, but that's a lot to put on our actors, especially Sam Roulston, who played Aaron, the person giving all of Johnny's backstory, which is just you know, a speech that goes on for minutes. And we're like, we got to give ourselves the freedom to break that up. So we went against our rule, and we were just like, as long as we keep the momentum going, as long as we're able to like see characters and deliver new information, we can break free of that rules. It does start to feel more like a traditional film at that point in time, but then it kind of is at that point.
Yeah.
There are breaks where we're like, oh no, this is, quote unquote, the real movie break. And
100%.
that's one of the real movie breaks. And then the last, 15 minutes or so of the film, I'd say, are like one of the real movie breaks too.
Totally. The people are going to be able to see it May 31st in theaters, and then it's going to eventually be on Shudder, which is the horror movie fan playground. I love Shudder. I'm so excited that people are going to be able to see it there. This is a spoiler question for people who have not seen it yet, but I'm going to get us out closer to release, so it'll be good. But spoiler alert. I don't mess around with horror movies. It's one of my favorite genres. I'm also creative as well. I was just in LA, and I just wrapped a short horror film that I wrote and produced as well.
Congrats, man.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Aurora's death scene is probably one of the most brutal things I have ever watched. You know what I mean? In my life, essentially. And I think it's up there, and people are going to talk about it. When you're making the movie and you're kind of doing those scenes finally and like talking to Charlotte and everything, do you think about the impact that might have in the horror movie kind of community when it's out there? Or is that something that you totally don't really think about at all while you're making it? Because that will turn some heads. I'm just letting you know, like it has already.
We didn't really think about the impact at all. We just thought, like, Stephen Kostansky, the special effects, the prosthetics effects lead on this, who's also a director as well.
Mm-hmm.
We were like, our main thing with this was like trying to figure out gags that we hadn't seen before and challenging ourselves. So all we're thinking about is, can we pull this off? That's it. We wanted to do things that are new. We wanted to do things that we hadn't really seen before. But yeah, when you're in the moment, you're just thinking, can we pull this off? But he did, like, his first pass through the script, reading the notes or reading through it. His one note on that was, this is going to be fun. So
Well, I just can't wait
about it.
when it's out for people to see it. It's interesting, right? Because the movie goes to film festivals. There was a premiere in New York recently too over the weekend. So like there's been sprinkles of people kind of seeing it, but then when I really want to see the big effect when it's out in theaters May 31st and a violent nature, and then it's going to eventually be on Shudder. Chris, so great chatting with you, man. Thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, not a problem at all, Pete.
Thank you for tuning in to Popternative. Make sure to check out our past episodes of Popternative on YouTube.
This has been an Autograph Communications production.